Like and follow if you love horror. Decompression at this depth takes damn near 4 days, Sarah rejected the idea. Even the rapid ascension torpedoes can only do it in under 2. By that time he'll be dead. We need to start talking alternatives. Dear Lord, Liddy responded. Okay, how do we get it safely off? Teddy rejoined the conversation and tried to focus on a way to help Simon. The damn thing's teeth cross every which way, and they certainly didn't go in straight. We need to cut it off, and carefully, she explained. We've got no way to x-ray the punctures, which means exploratory with only the minimal life support equipment available. We've barely got enough sedative to keep him under for the full length of the procedure, and we don't have anesthesia. He'll need to be intubated, and if he crashes, a syringe of adrenaline prepped and ready to go. I need the whole crew here to assist in case he needs to be held down at any point. I'll go grab Parker, Enos, and Robert, Lydia offered. What should I tell them? Keep it simple. Sarah didn't even look at her as she found the question frustrating. Simon had an accident. We need to prep for emergency surgery. Lydia left the lab, and the other two discussed strategy for removal. She beelined the east tube, where the other three were likely gathering in the lounge and kitchen, probably still finishing up breakfast. There she found a dreary Parker, face first in a cup of coffee, her spiky blonde hair wilting in the steam, her strong hands clutching the life-giving bean juice like it was a holy grail. Enos was just down the way. A cold sausage hung from his thin lips. His pepper-gray hair was illuminated by the outlandish flashing color palette of the video game he played. Robert re-entered the habitat bubble on the far end, where the facilities were. A toothbrush foamed in his mouth, and his jet-black hair was still wet and slicked back from a shower. He looked up and locked eyes with Liddy. He cocked an eyebrow and noticed the worry etched across her face. Liddy didn't speak. She just pointed and mouthed the words she wanted to say. Robert spat his toothpaste out, swore in his native tongue of Korean, then turned his attention back to Liddy. You okay? There was an accident, she blurted out. Jesus, it's too early for this. Packer pushed herself up. The three made haste out of the room, heading back towards the lab, leaving Enos confused, having missed what just transpired. Enos paused his game, got up, and cautiously followed. When the 4 crew members arrived at the lab, Teddy and Sarah had basics prepped. The others watched in tense, poised anxiety as Sarah forced an intubation tube down Simon's throat. Okay, I need everyone to grab a limb in case he struggles. Sarah began slowly, but firmly. Teddy, I want you to hand me tools when I ask. Liddy, if I say so, start pumping oxygen. Just like counting down seconds. Squeeze, Mississippi, squeeze, Mississippi, squeeze, Mississippi. There was deep hesitation in the group, but no one had the capacity to process what they saw and complied to Sarah's request. Robert and Enos grabbed an arm, Packer grabbed the legs. Liddy stood by with the pump, and Teddy waited in the wing with a tray of tools meant for dissection. Sarah looked at each member of the crew in turn, then proceeded with a simple nod. She reached down, placed the scalpel at the mouth of the fish, and leaned in to observe. What the fuck? She said, her head tilting. What's wrong? Teddy asked nervously. The mouth. She didn't provide much information at first. It's fused with his skin. That is not possible, Enos claimed with his gravelly French accent. The process of biotic parasitism would allow the fusion of a foreign host. The protein strands required for fusion have to be genetic match, just like an organ donor. It also doesn't happen this quickly, Sarah elaborated. It's hardly been 10 damn minutes. She pressed the blade in and traced the side of the fish's mouth. A foul-smelling gray fluid seeped out, like a gangrenous sludge. This woke Simon, his eyes flared alive. The rest of the crew was immediately forced to restrain him as he struggled. Sarah fought through the foul smell and squirming Simon. She rolled back the skin as best she could, but found it too was fighting her. The seam began to slowly heal shut as tendrils of flesh pulled at it, trying to secure it closed again. Inside the wound was a mess of connective tissues and tubes. The fish had already made itself a part of several essential organs and arteries. Sarah ended her advance and sat back in defeat. The folds of skin clapped shut, and with an odd sucking sound, sealed closed. It left a black scar wherever Sarah had cut. The rest of the team watched in amazement. There was a hollow silence, then Simon spoke. Please help me. Hey there, sweetie. We're working on it. Just some small complications. Theodore moved in and began petting Simon's head. What? What's wrong? Simon squeaked out. Well, honey, you have a bit of a parasite. Teddy smiled and tried to provide some levity. Simon managed to chuckle a bit, soliciting a slight, though sad, chuckle from a few members of the crew. About 12 minutes after the failed surgery, Simon stabilized and was even up and talking. The crew hung in the lab, each putting forth their own expertise as to what they were witnessing. Each took turns poking and prodding Simon. He found it frustrating, but given the circumstances, he dealt with it. Packer was the first to throw out wild theories as Simon's condition continued to improve. Okay, obviously the fish can't just mix its DNA with a human. So in order to bond the protein strands together and avoid rejection, it must have some kind of universal coupling. A sort of open chain in the DNA sequence that allows it to connect. She took a sample of the skin around the black scarring. It fought to reattach itself, but once free, it quickly shriveled up and died. With respect, that doesn't make any sense. Enos paced and gestured slowly as he spoke. He worked through each thought with the motion of his hand. Even the protein strands could convince each organ to prevent rejection. The body is a complex biome of independent cells. It's now sharing with the fish. It would trigger an immune response. Foreign bacteria would go haywire. An infection should be, as we speak, massive. I do feel a bit feverish, Simon explained. He was also sweating profusely. Yes, but what I mean is, while the foul smell hints at putrefaction, there is no sign of infection, Enos continued. Open, Sarah said, sliding a thermometer into his mouth. She watched the digital counter. In a few short seconds, it registered 82 degrees. That can't be right. She tossed it aside, grabbed another one just as quickly as before, and returned it to the same reading, 82 degrees. If I didn't know any better, you're getting colder, not warmer. That's impossible, Liddy added. He should be dead at that temperature. This thing is changing Simon at a genetic level, Enos proposed as he slowed to a stop. That kind of rapid mutation isn't possible. Sarah wasn't having any of it. The readings are just wrong. And yet, the skin was fused in only a few minutes, bonding with an organism that should have been rejected as alien DNA sequence? There is no other explanation. Enos continued, undeterred by Sarah's rejection of the theory. In fact, destabilizing. Rapid mutation at a cellular level must be occurring faster than the cells themselves can break down, preventing an autoimmune response. He's not rejecting the fish because the fish and Simon are now one and the same. That's it. Sarah had enough, and it showed. Prep the shuttle for immediate ascension. If he's stable enough to walk, he's stable enough to make it to the surface in 4 days. Yeah, but what are we bringing back to the surface in 4 days? Liddy was shaken by the whole event. A corpse? A fish mutant? We need to take the emergency ascension pods. The rapid ascension torpedoes are for pressure breaches only, Sarah snapped. They're part of the structure to minimize design complexities. The moment they launch, the sub-base hull will be compromised. Total collapse and implosion will occur only moments later. You're worried about the damn lab? Liddy snapped back. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar research facility. Sarah slammed her hand on the exam gurney. It actually says multi-billion. I tripped over myself. Which caused Simon to jump slightly. We're talking about the difference between 12 to 16 hours. At Simon's current rate, and more unexpected changes will happen before that time. Thanks for the morale booster, Simon grumbled, mostly to himself. It may, Robert spoke suddenly, be more complicated than that. He waited patiently for the group to be silent before he spoke again. If Enos is correct, the very nature of what Simon is has changed. The rat is designed for special rapid depressurization, assuming human parameters. Already there's much about Simon that places his survival at risk for such sudden pressure changes. His blood is colder, different from the nominal human conditions a rat is spec'd for. Well, at least you're thinking of Simon and not your goddamn Grant, Liddy said, her tone venomous. That will do, Miss Winters. Sarah shot up from her seat and stamped her foot, addressing Liddy directly.